evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, the largest single-screen drive-in in the United States. We're certainly glad you could be with us this evening, and don't forget the concession stand is open with all kinds of great things to eat and drink.
89.3 Mahoning Drive-In Radio, your old friend Virgil back once again for another exciting episode of the podcast. As you guys know, the only podcast dedicated to the revival of our beloved drive-in culture. And today I'm joined, as always, with my co-host and general manager extraordinaire, Mark. Say hello.
Hello.
And we got Jeff, partner, owner, and king of the Mahoning Drive-In. Jeff, say hello, my friend.
Hi, everybody.
And we're really excited about this one. As you guys know, Mark has been stepping it up with getting some guests for the show. And honestly, when it comes to the classic American drive-ins that make up our landscape of our industry, our beloved industry, one can always point to the majestic Admiral Twin off the historic Route 66 in Tulsa as one of the finest, without a doubt, delivering double features for over 71 years, I believe now, yep. And home of an incredibly unique back-to-back screen. And a lot of you guys will probably know it as the drive-in from the outsiders. So we're honored, we are privileged to welcome owner of the Admiral Twin and also Starlite in Wichita, Blake Smith. Welcome, my friend.
Yes, thanks for having me.
We're so excited. And you know, it's so true. When people talk about the classic drive-ins in America, you guys are right at the top of that list. Why don't you go a little bit into the history of the Admiral?
Well, I mean, it was built in 1951. It was built as a single screen. And then the second year, they added a second screen. For whatever reason, the first year, they were called the Modern Air Drive-In. And then when they built the second screen, which of course I had nothing to do with, in 1951. They changed the name to the Admiral Twin Drive-In. The Admiral part comes from the street, Admiral Boulevard, which is what used to connect us to the box office. We used to have a real long driveway that went over to Admiral. But then in the 60s, they came through and put in I-244. So we're still called the Admiral Twin Drive-In, but we're not off Admiral anymore.
Yeah, it's funny. That happens a lot with these drive-ins. Yeah. They were named off of the road they were on.
So now we have kind of a service road that runs between us and the highway there that's we mostly use, but the public can use it. But that's when it was built, and I got involved. So my father owned the drive-in before I did. He bought the drive-in in 1987. And so I basically been around it since 87. And then me and another guy bought him out. It wasn't actually given to me or nothing. Fair is fair, right? And
right.
And business is business. And that was in 2000. So I've actually been the actual owner since 2000. And then I have a small partner on this thing too. And then let's see, the Admiral Twin Drive-In, our claim to fame, like you mentioned, is the outsiders. I mean, I still get people coming by here all the time, want to take pictures of the drive-in or wanting to see where they crawled under the fence, which you could still crawl under the fence.
Amazing.
if you want to do that. I don't know what we would have done to do that, secured that. But so that's our claim to fame. And then our other claim to fame would be we burned down in 2010. So
the heartbreaking story that literally swept the country.
Yeah, I guess it was.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you guys would know. You're not close to us, so I mean, if you knew about it, but it burned down, and of course, we didn't have insurance on the old wooden structure at the time. We never could find anybody that would carry. There would be a reasonable amount, so we just never did.
Yeah,
have
it's impossible to insure a screen. We're kind of in that boat.
Yeah. You guys probably are a little bit. I can understand that, but it stood for I don't know how many ever years, 60 years or something, and then it went down in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So we missed the 2011 season, and then we got back open in 2012. We rebuilt it, and I relocated the concession stand, the bathrooms underneath the screen. So it's still back-to-back screen.
Yeah.
we spent way too much money on it. But at the time, it really felt like that's what the public wanted. You know, it's kind of an iconic look. Even the wooden structure was kind of an iconic looking structure.
Oh, yeah,
Part of the
absolutely.
landscape.
Yeah. And so I felt a little obligated, but I wanted to kind of try to pay homage to it, if you will, and build it back similar. Of course, we built it all out of metal. So it's not
You
gonna,
learned your lesson.
yeah, we learned our lesson. That's right. You know, I could have thrown up a couple other screens and probably saved $800,000.
Right, worked with the land and not had to go with the
and probably done the same amount of business.
Right.
But that's not what we did. So we're still paying it off. But that's how it goes. And so that's kind of the Admiral Twin Drive-In. And I've been out here all these years, and it's as you guys know, it's a labor of love, and it's fun, and it's you know, we do make a living out of it, but nevertheless, it's not a get rich quick situation. So
No way.
you know,
the passion
Yes.
project.
yeah, kinda. And so, you know, I have to have other businesses, and then the Starlite Drive-In in Wichita, I took that over 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, they were going to knock it down and build warehouses, and there was a big public outcry there, and so I went in there and
You were the savior.
worked a deal.
There it is.
So we're still going there, and that's a really strong drive-in. It does a little more business than we do in Tulsa, which is odd because Wichita's smaller, but there's not as much to do in Wichita so as Tulsa. And I know you might find this hard to believe, but in Tulsa we get everything now. We've got everything. I mean, U2 kicks off their concerts here. Fleetwood Mac did. There's just so much entertainment now in
It's
Tulsa.
the happening area. Yeah.
It kind of is. And I mean, look, I've been around this town forever, and I would have never thought that would have happened to Tulsa. But nevertheless, it has. So it does make it a little bit harder when there's so much going on in the market. Anyway, I'm jibber jabbing away. Sorry about that.
No, it's this is exactly what we wanted. I mean, you guys have a really relatable story in that, you know, your business was threatened, and you know there were elements of the classic look and feel of the drive-in, and you guys, when you rebuilt, were sure to play to those memories that people have with the drive-in, even down to the look of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think so, and like I say, it's a good and a bad thing. I'd love to have it completely paid off, but you know, in a couple more years we'll have it paid off, and all will be good, right?
Right. Yeah. That's beautiful. Well, why don't you talk a little bit about your history with drive-ins? Obviously, you've been in the biz, in the game as far as the ownership, but where's your love of drive-ins kind of born? I take it your childhood, because, you know, we've all kind of got that backstory as well.
Yeah, you know, to some degree. I mean, I grew up in the theater industry. My father was a kind of a bigwig with General Cinema and Cobb Theaters out of the South. So I moved around a little bit at a young age, and then, you know, I'm old. You know, I'm 55. So you know, the 60s and 70s and into the 80s, we moved around quite a bit. And then until we finally kind of came back to Tulsa. I was born in Tulsa, but then, you know, he would, you know, back then you'd move for $25 to go run a new theater, you know, or something. You know, it was just,
No, that's right.
You know, it's just a different time. You know, you'd get promoted and you'd go run a bigger theater and blah, blah, blah. And then eventually he became the area manager for General Cinema out of Chicago. So I sort of grew up in St. Louis, Chicago, and Birmingham, Alabama. So I was always around movie theaters, really from the very, very beginning of my life. And so my love really is for the industry, and I do love drive-ins. I'm a little bit more focused on drive-ins now. I had owned 4 or 5 different indoor theaters, and sort of luckily I got out of them. And
at the right times, right?
yeah, just, you know, either by selling them or by leases coming up and newer theaters coming in and knocking you around. You know how the industry goes. So that's really my foundation, is really probably just the movie theater business as a whole, not exactly just drive-ins. I mean, I know I was kind of looking over your list of questions. What's the earliest memory of a drive-in? Well, I do remember going to a drive-in when my dad was checking on some theaters in Florida, and we went to a drive-in there. And then the next memory I remember is like 1987 when he bought
like
the
years
drive-in.
later.
Yeah. And now all of a sudden
Right.
he's now in the drive-in business. And so anyway, I've always worked in movie theaters and always been around them. And like I say, that's kind of my love. I still love movie theaters and I do love drive-ins. It's just kind of how it all worked out, So I didn't grow up exactly, my childhood. A lot of people think my childhood was running around this drive-in, and that's not really true.
But it was running around movie houses for sure.
Yes, absolutely. It was checking out movie theaters, and he'd be auditing theaters, and I'd be running around movie theaters. So that was like my playgrounds, So
It's a hell of childhood right there.
It really is, because I love to go in and smell popcorn. It just, I feel at home, and the old soda on the carpet, it just it smells like my childhood.
Yeah, I love it. Well, you mentioned it, the unique feature about the Admiral. Is there anything kind of stand out about the Starlite in Wichita?
The Starlite in Wichita is kind of an interesting drive-in in that not the previous owner, the one that was going to sell it for warehouses, he came onto the drive-in from the previous owner, a guy named Jim Goebel. Do you guys know Jim Goebel? Did you know Jim Goebel? Anybody?
No.
Okay.
No, I've heard the name, but I didn't know him personally. No.
Okay, so he was a guy that he loved drive-in movie theaters. And he was a guy that lived in Denver, Colorado, and he had sold a business for quite a bit of money. He'd become kind of wealthy, I guess. And instead of retiring, he looked around to try to buy a drive-in theater. He couldn't buy one in Colorado. Closest one he could find was in Wichita. So he went and bought the Starlite Drive-In in Wichita.
Beautiful, yeah.
And for him, it became kind of a hobby, if you will. He ran that thing. It was first class. I mean, when you pull up, it almost looks like an airport to some degree. All the speaker poles have lights on them that still work, so we have to keep all that up.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it is. He ran that place. I mean, I tried to buy it from him in 2015. He and I were talking because he was starting to get a little older, and he couldn't quite decide if he wanted to sell it. And he kept telling me, I've just never made any money with this drive-in, blah, blah, blah. And if you look back on the grosses, the thing was just knocking them dead, man. I mean, it was just in like the early 2000s, the late 90s and early 2000s, the thing in the box office was doing like over $1 million in the box office, $1.2 million for a twin. I mean, he was just killing it. And he said, I could just never make any money. Well, his payroll, he would run his payroll. I mean, he was paying everybody. He was paying everybody a lot of money. And yeah, I mean, he wasn't making any money, but his payroll would be $300,000 or $400,000 a year. It's just, he did it right, but he did it too right. And so when he happened to pass away, he didn't have anybody to leave it to. And he got cancer, and he died real fast. He got it, and then he died like 2 months later. Wow. So he willed the drive-in to his managers, what ended up happening. So the manager was kind of set up to fail, if you will. He had worked for like Carmike and AMC and some other circuits, but he really was not a business owner, and he was not willing to go in and kind of cut and make the slashes that you really needed to make, because now at this point, the drive was not doing those big numbers. They weren't, the industry had changed a little bit. Back in the early 2000s, there wasn't as many movie theaters. And then, kind of before the megaplexing really happened in Wichita, if you really will. So what ended up happening was he just was not equipped to be able to operate that drive-in. So he was going to sell it. And then he just got a lot of pushback on it. But it's a beautiful drive-in. I do have to make money from it. So I can't afford to spend that much money on payroll. So I've cut it back. And the other side of it is it's I don't know how it is there, but it's in this part of the country, and I hear this all over, but it's been a little bit hard retaining help as well, and people wanting to work. So while I can't run it as a hobby, I try to keep it up the best I can, because there is a lot to live up to there. But it's a beautiful drive-in. It's a twin screen, a little more classically set up, but it's kind of set up more like in an L shape, if you will. You could probably look at it, Google Earth, if you really cared.
Single concession lobby, shared concession?
Yeah, one big concession, yep. And he's got 2 lines. And they kind of had it half set up self-serve and half employees helping or queue. They didn't really have queue lines, but they... So what I ended up doing when I came in there is I turned everything around and made it 100% self-serve. So you go down the line, kind of cafeteria style line.
That's
and
like
then
others.
Yep, that's the way to go, babe. Because I have queue lines in Tulsa. So when I rebuilt Tulsa, I was really kind of in the indoor game. And so I was used to the queue lines, and that's what I was doing. I wish I didn't do it that way because your per caps are way bigger on self-serve. I don't know if it's just a mental thing with folks. They're not adding it up as they go. When you're standing in the queue line, you can sit there and add up how much you're spending.
Totally.
But when you're walking down a line, you don't really
just keep on grabbing, put it in the tray.
Keep going, and then you get down to the end of the line and you got a line of people behind you. It's hard to put things back. So, it's if I build a drive-in, I will definitely spend the extra money and make the concession stand bigger and do self-serve lines because it's the only way to fly.
Yeah, was that the case with a lot of the drive-ins that you ran? Were most of them self-serve?
No, most of the ones I ran were just like what we have at the Mahoning. We'd have 5 or 6 people back there. Now, depending on the size of your concession stand, I know some drive-ins that you couldn't have more than 2 or 3 people. You were running into each other. And then there were other ones I ran where I could have 5 or 6 or 7 back there. And but no, that's what I find interesting. I never had a self-serve one. Never.
Man, you have to have a pretty good grill person that can kind of be going back and forth. You have to kind of keep an eye on what's going out. But it really reduces your payroll costs a lot, or at least it has for me. I can run a fairly busy night at the Starlite with 8 people probably total, and that includes box people. And
that's pretty good. Yeah.
And if I have a lot person, then which I'm struggling to find somebody to do that right now, but that would be your 9th person, and I could probably run we could run 1,200 people on that, or 1,300 people, something like that.
Yeah. I'm curious, was the Starlite built as a twin, or did they add one?
No, I believe it was built as a twin. I think it was originally called the Landmark Drive-In. I don't know as much about the history of the Starlite as I do Admiral, but I believe it was built as a twin.
So that must have come a little later on then.
I know the building that we have currently was built in 1971. And so I think I don't know if that's when it was originally built, though. I think that was the second building. I want to say it may have been built in the 50s.
Did that craze happen almost instantly? It seems like it did. You guys opened in 51 at the Admiral, and then was it purely the demand that made them add the extra screen, or the idea of the multiplex thing, kind of adding
I don't know, because there was a lot of drive-ins, just like a lot of towns. The Tulsa had 11 or 12 drive-ins at one time. They were all singles. You didn't need
multiple screens, yeah.
Yeah, they were all singles. And I think the same thing was in Wichita as well. Land was cheaper back then, of course. And, that's what's basically killed drive-ins now. If I was a little bit further south in Tulsa, we wouldn't be a drive-in. It would have been redeveloped at some point. Or just, the land, of course, is worth more than the business, but where we happen to sit, it's not that we're in a bad area of town, but we're not in the best area of town. Now, I've never had really any issues or nothing, but I think that would go with almost all the drive-ins, don't you guys think?
Oh yeah.
If you're in a nice area, Walmart would have, come in and offered us, a lot of money, and it'd been hard to turn down. But
that's the case usually 90% of the time. It goes the other way. That's why when we started this podcast, we wanted to do a drive-ins in the news type of thing. And 9 times out of 10, it's this drive-in just got bought out. This drive-in's being demolished. But every now and then you'll get the good story of the revamp or the reopening, or every now and then a new drive-in opening up. But that's the case.
Yeah.
All of our childhood drive-ins are now Walmarts and Targets.
Yeah.
Sure. I just read where the 112 over in Fayetteville, which is only about 2 hours from here, it's a drive-in I was interested in buying. I just read where the lady there is getting a little older. She sold it to some developer. They're going to redevelop the whole thing into, townhouses and, urban type stuff. And I think they're going to build an indoor theater there. I hadn't talked to her in a while, though, but I guess good for her. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, good for her, but bad for the drive-in.
Right. Yeah, it is, because that's a real up and coming area in Northwest Arkansas. But Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just all about the land costs, why they've all went away for sure. And when the multi screens came in for drive-ins, I'd never really sat down and really researched that.
I found it interesting though that you guys right away opened up with the single and then put the twin in the next year.
Yeah, that just may have been their plan the whole time. Right. I don't know. We're not real far where the Admiral sits. I'm probably 4 miles from downtown Tulsa, just right straight down 244. So even back in the 50s, we would not have been overly far. I mean, it would have felt a little far out if you were in downtown, but not, oh my God, far out.
Right.
And so that must probably played into some of their thinking, because some of the other drive-ins where I know where the locations are in Tulsa, they wouldn't have been good locations. They wouldn't be good locations now.
Right. Totally. Well, you guys obviously went through all kind of the ups and downs, but 2020 was a big year with the pandemic. Did you see a big boom across the board?
So, I did, but it's not for why I think that. I know that's the national perception.
Totally.
Any publicity for drive-ins is good. So we don't want to say, no, that's not true. It absolutely was. For me, that was my biggest year in a while, but it wasn't because of the movies, because there were no movies.
That's right.
It was 100% because of special events I did in Tulsa. So, a lot of people, I always forget what they call them, but people, they'll rent a space in the hotel and they're either selling something or they're, company, whatever. I became that place. So,
we feel that. Everybody and their mother came out of the woodwork. Can we rent a lot?
Yeah. So I would just do rentals on the facility, and I was renting it at the worst case at $2,500 a night. And in Tulsa, people couldn't take it fast enough. They couldn't write me a check quick enough. Now in Wichita, it did not work as well there. I was actually down in Wichita because there was no, because it's a good first run house. So there, the special events, if I quote them $2,500, they'd kick me in the knee. I mean, they were mad, So Wichitans are, sometimes they're funny about their money, but in Tulsa, they're just like, we can't, we'll take 2 nights, so that's the reason why it was, we did church things. I did some concerts. I mean, all the things you guys probably did, right? I mean,
sure. All came across the plate for sure.
Yeah, just special events. So, and then last year I did pretty good with special events, but this year I'm going to do better than I normally would probably do on most years, but it's not going to be 2020 as far as special events.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. We run a destination drive-in. As much as we have the local love, it's the majority of our fan base is coming in from all over the place. Now, you must get a mixture of it, being where you're located. You are a local drive-in, but you're also such a historic drive-in. You must have kind of the travelers in.
Yeah, I get people coming in, doing a Route 66 thing, but we're not exactly on Route 66. Route 66 would actually be 1 more mile over, but people will include us on the Route 66, and we don't turn it down. But we'll get travelers coming through, and this past weekend we had again, Tulsa's just kind of changed. I don't want to make it sound like it's Chicago or New York, because it's not, but it has become a little bit more of a destination. There's just things going on in this town that are bizarre, that people are coming here. And so we had several international people here this last weekend that didn't speak very good English when they came through. We had to help them with their radios and stuff. In rental cars and whatnot. So we do get that. And again, we get I get tons of people. Tons is probably a wrong word, but I hundreds of people each year that will probably come by and talk about the Outsiders and take pictures of the place and and I guess I've been told, I'm old, but I've got little bitty kids, so my kids aren't this old yet. But I've been told, at least around here in junior high, it's the Outsiders book is a required reading. I don't know if that's really true.
Yeah, it was in my high school. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So people are interested in where it was shot, and then there's a guy in Tulsa that's the house that the Outsiders that they filmed at that house. He's been restoring it into some sort of little Outsiders museum, and so people, they bring a bus ride over here to see the drive-in. I mean,
The location people are dedicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
They go, they get their pictures, they want to reenact it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So, between those two things, we do get quite a few people, but it's still kind of our regulars that I often wonder, when we close for the year, do they go to the movies in the off season? I think there's just some people that just like drive-ins, and that's what they do.
Yeah. How does your season run at the Admiral? What's your season?
Usually about March, somewhere. We opened for the Batman, which was a terrible idea because you couldn't even see it on a drive-in screen.
Oh, so dark.
I
thought that when I watched it.
I complained so much to Warner Brothers. I had a 3-week commitment, like everybody. They wanted you to do 3 weeks. Yeah. And I complained enough that in Tulsa, they let me out of it. So I did 2 weekends, and they let me out for the 3rd weekend. But we opened early this year, just a little early. I usually open about mid-March, no later than April 1st. And then we close usually around Halloween. In Wichita last year, I stayed open through just before Spider-Man came out in December, because Spider-Man was going to be a 3-week commitment, and all the weekends were Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. And I couldn't get away to work. Otherwise, I would have stayed open. I would have stayed open for sure, man, because we were doing business pretty good right up until then. In this part of the country, especially Tulsa, it's colder in Wichita. Wichita's 2.5 hours from Tulsa, but somewhere between here and Tulsa, there's a cold line. It's always about 5 to 10 degrees cooler there, and they get a little more harsher weather than we do here. But in November,
can push it a little bit.
Yeah, I can push it. I mean, and I can still get some days that are in the 70s, there in November. Generally in December, it does fall off quite a bit. But, Spider-Man was so big, I would have definitely gotten a piece of that. And I just couldn't find anybody to work, so I had to close. Right. So I do push it in Wichita, just again, because it's a really good first run house. And so we just... look, I got to pay bills in the off season too. So if I can get people to work, I'll do it. But if I can't, then I have to kind of do it. Like I have to play ball with the staff, right?
All right, absolutely.
Right. How do you find that your digital equipment is holding up? Have you had a lot of problems with it at either drive-in, or is it pretty reliable?
So far, it's been reliable. Knock on wood. In Wichita, I have Christie's, which I love. I've not really had any problems with those. In Tulsa, we have NECs, which I don't love, but I've not really had any major problems with them. We did our warranty just came up on those, and they're not allowing us to buy another warranty on these machines. So I am not the most technically inclined guy that God ever created. So I don't know what that's going to mean exactly, or what's going to go out on it. You guys may know way more about it than I would.
No, actually, we don't, because I think we're the only drive-in theater left in the country. We still run 35 millimeter.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Yeah.
That's the unique pull. And that's the thing I think all three of us are so curious about. Jeff obviously has experience running first runs. I've run several indoor theaters. But as far as the drive-in goes, we're an all retro house running all 35 millimeters. So what is it like running first run movies and kind of being at the beck and call of what's available and what the studio allows and all that?
Well, I'm a little bit trained to be
oh, that's right. You're like, this has been my life.
This is what I need. Product. Give me product, and we'll do the rest. I mean, not to change the subject from drive-ins, but one issue that everybody's talking, are movie theaters going to survive? Well, first off, as a drive-in theater owner, I need the movie theaters to survive. We need, if they go away, we're going to go away too. With the film companies are not geared towards the drive-ins. The drive-ins are an afterthought. It's a secondary thing for them. If they could just have AMC, Regal, and Cinemark and get rid of the rest of us, they would. They hate the independents, and obviously you guys are in the industry, this. It's not an issue. There's not going to be as many movies released, and I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know, but that's not so much the issue. The issue is the way the release patterns are the issue for me, and I don't know how that ever gets changed, and I'm sure it doesn't get changed, but these guys need to talk a little bit more than they do, and they do talk. But I mean, as an example, this coming weekend, we've got Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which is a great, that's a great title for us. Yeah. But there's also a movie coming out on the same day called Ambulance. well, I can't get ambulance. I don't have any room. If I had a third screen, I could do it. But the way it kind of all works out, I can't play that. So, and there's a dead spot in August. They should have waited and done ambulance in August. I mean, if they would stretch these things out just a little bit, and they do to some degree, but not enough. I almost wish there was and this will never happen, I know this, but I wish there was an intermediary that was between us and the film companies, and we help decide when the damn release dates are.
And say, hey, this makes a little more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's also some titles will come out and I'll be like, why are they releasing that now? That should come out at Christmas, or that should have been a summer picture. It's like sometimes it doesn't make any sense when they're releasing them. So, if we can get 40 movies a year, I think you could make it all work. I mean, I know that's way down, but nevertheless, I think you could make that work. I'm going to actually talk to NATO about that. Not that it's going to do any good, but when I go to CinemaCon, I'm planning on actually trying to get my thoughts together better. But you guys kind of get what I'm saying, and I that worries me for the industry. The other thing that's a little bit worrisome, if I was in the indoor game, or if I was a megaplex owner, which, good God, I'm glad I'm not, is that they are now kind of living off of what I've always lived off of for the drive-ins, and that's a handful of tentpole movies. And that's not good for the industry as a whole. That part's not good. I don't know how that exactly gets fixed, but I mean, there's not going to be romantic comedies. Can you remember the last time there was a romantic comedy that really did a whole lot of business? I mean,
those are the things that go to Apple and Hulu and all that stuff now. They don't have a market for that in the first run.
I know, but that's worrisome. I mean, if everything's just going to have to be a superhero movie, it probably doesn't affect me so much. But I think this conversation of will movie theaters survive will continue on for a while, even though they will survive. I think a washout of some of the screens wouldn't be the worst thing, but AMC's got a 20 screen. It's 100,000 square feet. How do you pay the electric bill in August this year? So it's just kind of worrisome on that. But I'm always, I'm in the first run business, and that's what I do. And when we had it in 2020, when we had it played more retro titles, they did okay, but it's just not, for me, a way to succeed. It's just I've got 26 acres here. Both my drive-ins have about 26 acres. Yeah. And, that's a lot of land. And I don't know. I think we got to have the first run to make it work in any kind of big way to, make my wife happy to be able to buy her a new car every 2 years or something. Whatever that means,
In first run situations, you often have to follow the money. That's not a bad thing, but that's why first run is first run, because that's where the majority of the bucks are made. We just happen to be in a niche where we can run old 35 millimeter film and people just love it. They pack the place. And
I mean, that's become an appeal for us as well, is the fact that we are the last remaining full-time 35 millimeter drive-in.
Yeah, I met with a gal yesterday that she helped me promote some. I do these scary movies. Like when we get closer to Halloween, I do what I call Scary Movie Monday, and I do like the 4 or 5 or 6 Mondays before Halloween. And so I was meeting with her, and she was trying to come up with some promotions to do some stuff. She's kind of a 40-year-old punk rock kid. And she was talking about your drive-in, and she follows you guys and all the stuff. I mean, absolutely loves it. And I know some people in Wichita that follow you guys. So, I mean, the word is out. How does that do for you guys, though? I mean, without not going, digital and trying the first run. I mean, it's kind of more like running a concert venue to some degree?
It's certainly become more of a Comic-Con convention space, with bringing out celebrity guests and having vendors on the regular basis. And it almost starts with that when we're playing the classic movies, as I'm sure when you do the classic movie nights, it almost becomes a themed event immediately, and then we tack little elements onto that have kind of become our calling card. But you're right. I mean, without, I think, all that extra hoopla and what makes us stand out as an original and one of the only and this and that, it's an incredibly hard business model to go after. And when we jumped into it and made the decision, totally untested. It was everybody who got the threat of, if you don't go digital, you're dead. They pretty much went dead or went digital, So,
yeah, it kind of, in the 90s, I ran a lot of midnight. I had an indoor theater that we ran a lot of midnight movies. I did the Rocky Horror stuff and it had a following, and it was just, it took a lot of promoting. I mean, it just took a lot of promoting. That the one thing that I say about first runs, and maybe it's just because I'm in my mid 50s now, and I was kind of telling this gal this yesterday, is, I promoted a lot of events, especially in the 90s and early 2000s. And, some of them I would get 400 people for, and some of them I get four for,
right.
And, and at some point for me, it was just this, I got kind of run down on it. So that's the good thing about first run is that when Top Gun comes out, Tom Cruise is going to be on everything.
The marketing machine is there. People will know Top Gun's coming.
Yeah. And to make things worse, it was easier in the 90s to promote things. I could be on the rock station and the alternative station and in the newspaper, and everybody knew about it. I mean, I think it's so hard to get to people now. Facebook's changed the way they're doing things, and it's just... it's so hard to get to people. That frustrates me a little bit. Maybe it's just, the old man in me or something. I don't know.
You're totally right. You got to play in the market, to kind of stay relevant, to stay on top of the promotion. And like you said, more than anything, getting in front of people's eyes so they know we're open, we're playing this, and this is happening. You're right.
Yeah. That's why I like first run.
See, and that's why we get it. We get it.
Oh no, that's what I mean. You have to, especially when you have, you have two drive-ins, but still, they have to make you money. Like you said, you have to have an income from them above what it costs to actually run them. Yes. So it's understandable why you go with first run. We were just fortunate in doing what we do. We're in the right location. It was the right place at the right time. Or I don't think we would have made it either. But
it's an anomaly. And that's why I think people really look at us as like, a legend, is like, how did this work? And in a lot of ways, destiny and timing and all that had a lot to do with it. So we certainly count our blessings without a doubt. Now, what movie, obviously being in the first run and you do some retro shows, what does best for you? I mean, I take it's probably the family fare.
It's a combination of, I like to play a lot of family product just because it's economical for, younger families to bring to come out here with their kids. And, if I got young kids, they can run around and they're not really bothering anybody. And you can sit there and either watch the movie or don't watch the movie. You can be on your phone, whatever, you can talk. It's more of a social. I always think of when people ask me about what's the appeal of the drive-in, I always say it's a little bit more of a social event than it really is going to an indoor theater where you got to be quiet and you're shushed.
100%. You're renting a seat at a theater. At the drive-in, you are truly paying for an experience.
Yeah, it's just and look, if the moon's bright, I'm not going to get as good a picture. I mean, when I have people complain about the picture, they say, well, it's not as good as an indoor theater. I'm like, I know.
Have a moon at the indoor theater.
Yeah, I mean, I can't turn the whole sky and everything. I can't turn everything off, so, or the other thing that's unusual, again, not telling you guys anything, but your experience where you're sitting right now could be way different if you're over here 40 feet over this way. It could be a lot different for either the radio sound wave may come in better, or you may get a better picture from that spot.
It's so relatable.
It's just, so some of it, when I ever have complaints or I'm talking to people, some of it, I just kind of like lay the common sense on them, just hello. But when you get for movies though, I try, that's one bad thing about horror movies is that there's so many night scenes. So when I'm trying to pick the Scary Movie Monday movies, I'm trying to pick the brightest ones I can. Because it had like a 2-minute scene where it was completely black, and there was just you couldn't see nothing on the drive-in screen. Of course, it was a popular movie; I had to play it. But I love bright movies. I hate dark movies. Animated movies anymore are kind of a slam dunk for us. I mean, it's just kind of you just know that people are going to come out. Kids are only $4 at both the drive-ins, and we do offer double features, so you get 2 movies for that price. If you can stay that long, and then the any kind of action movies that are like Jungle Cruise. Jungle Cruise played forever. And then behind it, that Free Guy came in, which nobody in the industry was even talking about Free Guy last year.
Yeah.
It's like, that was a surprise for the whole industry. That made my fall. I mean, Free Guy just played and played and played. But between those two movies, I know Jungle Cruise was not huge right off the bat, but it continued to play. And those type, as you guys know, we make more money on in the long run.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're paying less in film rental. But that's the kind of stuff, sci-fis don't work very well for me. I've never had much luck with, I played the Star Treks, but they're not big. I think I've only been able to play one of these Star Wars, because most of those have been Christmas movies. It seemed like there was one a couple years ago that was a May movie.
Yeah,
that
is a downside. They push the Christmas release now every year,
Yeah. So, I don't really get a piece of those. But, those are high volume movies. And so somewhere you get a little bit on them, but that's not really our bread and butter. And like I say, I probably need about 6 pictures a year to kind of make my whole season.
Right.
Yeah. 6 real good ones.
Yeah.
As a booker, I'm curious, does the studio give you any flack as far as bringing back a movie that's been out for a little while, or are they a little bit lenient, being the fact that you have a lead picture and you have a double feature to follow?
Well, what do you mean? Like,
just as far as even, I know you opened with Encanto and Sing 2 on your second screen. Encanto's been out for a little bit. Was that something that they,
that was their idea.
Oh, that's great.
That was their idea.
The Oscar push, right?
Yeah, Disney. Well, I don't know if it was that or something caught on, and there was like a sing-songy thing, like where girls were singing with this movie. So they kind of came back to first run with it. And so just at the time I was reopening, so I went ahead and picked it up.
It was a great call, without a doubt.
Yeah, it did okay for us, even though it had come out, back in November. It just kind of depends, really for the, I use a film booker. I use Cinema Service out of Dallas, Tim Patton and Jeff Wayne. They've got probably 1,000 screens they book. I don't really need to use them anymore. I mean, it's almost like block booking. The film companies used to really work with you on the second feature. They don't really anymore. Now they're really pushing their own products. So, Warner Brothers has got Fantastic Beasts is getting ready to come out. Well, they're pushing Batman as the second feature. Well, first off, they're both incredibly long. So why would I want to do that? A.
Sure.
And B, you can't see it. So I'm not doing that. Well, they're not cutting me any. They're not giving us a better deal for me to bring in another film company's movie. So I have to play a Warner Brothers movie.
Right.
So that's kind of what it's become. When I'm playing Sonic, the new Sonic, it's Paramount. So behind it's going to be Lost City. Well, that's not a terrible booking, but that's because they're the same film company.
Right. So you really have to stick within the company on each screen.
Yeah, because the way they quote their terms, they used to work with us more. Drive-ins used to get better deals. If we're getting better deals, it's not by much, because we don't get all the showings that an indoor gets. You get 4 rounds a day, and I get 1 shot with it. But again, these guys don't care. The film companies don't care.
When's the last time you saw a matinee at a drive-in?
That's right. Well, if we could do it, baby. If we could do it, baby, I'd do it right now.
You know it.
It's been running through my head. As far as the Admiral goes, did you ever find out what caused the fire?
Nope. So the fire chief or fire inspector, when they came out, they may have done a little inspecting, but as soon as I said we had no insurance on it, I think they closed the case. I'm sure they thought we lit that thing up. We didn't. I'm just sure that they thought that. I had over probably the 10 years before that, on and off, we did have people stealing copper and stuff out here. So there was electrical actually in that building. I don't know why there was, but there was. I don't know why it came in through that way. My hunch is somebody probably was in there trying to steal some copper or some sort of electrical.
Pulled something loose.
And I really thought when the thing finally burned all the way down, we'd see a guy burned to the crisp holding something. Yeah. I honestly did. And never found him. So he either burned completely up or that wasn't what happened. I don't know. And they never did find it out, though.
Well, that's where our main powerhouse is under the screen.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, there you go.
Yeah.
Fair warning.
We're made of steel, and when we were built, we were made of steel, and that was a unique thing, I guess. The fact that you guys had the wooden screen for so long.
It was a long time. It was really they could have shot a horror movie in the inside of that thing. It was nuts in there. It had all these joists, and there was always pigeons and stuff in there. I mean, you had to wear a hat to walk through there, man. It was just
amazing.
I have a good story for you about the highway drive-in I ran. I walked out one day. I was there during the day, just during some maintenance, and I locked up the booth and was going to my car, and I hear this guy in the distance hammering, and boy, he's going that. I'm thinking without stopping, and I'm like, what in the world? Who hammers like that? I couldn't figure this out. Then I happened to look, and there I had a wooden screen, and there was a woodpecker knocking a hole in my screen.
Oh, great.
The downside of a wood screen.
Go get your BB gun.
So I was trying to throw rocks at him and everything else to get him off of the screen.
Get out of here.
You can't stand there all the time. That woodpecker probably come back.
That's right. He's on duty just with the BB gun. Come on. Mark, you got any questions for our main man?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to ask about is I noticed on the website for the Starlite that the Starlite offers in-car heaters. And that's something that's something that I've always heard about.
Oh my
In
God.
our section of the country, drive-ins tend to not be open too far into the cold weather months. So I just wondered what type of in-car heaters do you offer and how do they work?
I have no idea. We do have them. But I do not know what it's called. They've just had them all these years.
Wow.
I would rather suspect it's like when I took over the Starlite, the previous owner went through and cut off all the speakers. He cut them all off, right?
Oh.
So to go back in and put them in, it would probably take you an hour on every speaker. And I hadn't had speakers in Tulsa since 2008 or 9. We've been FM radio forever. So I didn't even try to put those things back because nobody makes them. The guys that made them are all dead. I mean, that's a lost art. That is not. So wherever they found them, when they go away, they ain't coming back. There is no, but I don't know what it is called, but they do work and they plug into your lighter in your car. If you have one, I don't know if all cars even still have those. And we do get people that come in and ask for them.
Awesome. Retro skill.
It is very retro. I've not sat down and really looked at it. I mean, I'm always on the run. So I know we got them and they work and my staff knows how to make them work. And until I have to really learn about it, I will wait and do that. I wish I could answer that question better for you, but I know we got.
It's one of those things we talked about it. Like, do they produce new car heaters?
No. Well, if they do, it would be something modern. You know what I mean? Yeah. It wouldn't be these cool old fixtures, and that's probably what you guys are looking for. But if I remember, I'll try to take a picture and send one to you.
That would be great.
That's awesome. Well, you've been amazing, my friend. Why don't you let people know where they can find information on the drive-in and all that good stuff? Drive-ins.
So if you're in Tulsa, it's the Admiral Twin Drive-In, and you can find us at admiraltwindrivein.com. If you're in Wichita, it's the Starlite Drive-In, and it's starlightfun.com, StarliteTEFUN.com. I inherited that website. So
you're like it or not.
But there's a lot of Starlite Drive-ins, so sometimes you got to do what you got to do, I guess, and that's what they came up with. So, but yeah, no, it was fun talking with you guys, and you guys holler at me anytime. I don't know that it was that interesting to anyone, but maybe you guys. But
no, it was very interesting.
People love it. I mean, we are the mouthpieces for the culture, and we're so excited whenever we can get an owner on, because you guys are the heroes of the industry. You guys are the ones that are, keeping this industry alive and standing on that same ground that we stand on from April through Halloween.
Well, guys, I wish you guys all the luck in the world. And like I say, holler at me, or if you're ever this way, holler at me. We'll get together.
Absolutely.
We will. We love
Great.
it. Well, thank you so much, my friend and audience. You heard it. Go and seek them out. If you guys are doing your road trips, plan them into your trip. It's an amazing scene and an amazing thing that you're doing. All right, guys. On that note, Jeff, take it away, my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. We hope you'll come back and see us again real soon. The exit is on the right-hand side of the screen at the front of the field, and most importantly, have a very safe trip home. Good night and God bless you.